He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
All right, welcome to The Alex Marlow Show. It's a mostly celebratory show. We got some stuff we're not celebrating later on that I'll get to, but we got big news here on the censorship front, the free speech battle, which is, I would say, of all the things that I do in media, I would say being a free speech warrior is probably the first thing that comes to mind. And we had some big victories today. Mark Zuckerberg has announced he's going to open up the Meta platform to more political content. He is going to dismantle their fascist left-wing censorship regime, which has been, I think, dogging the world, but in particular conservative media over the last, I don't know, I guess it's probably 6 or 7 years this has been in place. And the world is going to be a little more free place online. And I think that's great. I have a lot of nuance to these opinions, and we'll get to that throughout the show. But I will start with, we can't stop winning. We are going to get sick of winning, as Donald Trump has said, because this is something that we have him to thank for. His election is why the environment's changing. So we got good news. Mark Zuckerberg, who this is really Zuckerberg 2.0. You guys might recall that he had his, what was his, the haircut? It was like Marcus Aurelius. Like he had some sort of haircut. He was mimicking some sort of a Greek guy. And he'd only wear the same shirt, one type of shirt for years. And he just had this midlife crisis, and he got this whole new persona. He wears these big baggy T-shirts now, which are the fashion. He does mixed martial arts. He's constantly posting of him grappling and doing jujitsu with people. He wears a big medallion, like a Flavor Flav style medallion all the time. Not quite Flavor Flav. He would wear the clock. But he's got a big gold chain, which I thought that was a bold move when he started wearing the gold chain, because when he's got the gold chain, he knows, and he's a world famous guy. Almost everyone knows who he is. And he's got the chain. A lot of people going, I don't know about that chain. I don't know about 40-year-old guys walking around with chains, particularly white guys. Like, I don't know if that look works. But he went for it, and it's kind of working for him. And then he's got the curly hair puffed out a little bit. I can relate to that. I'm into that look. That's a good look. Much better look than the high and tight or whatever he was doing. So he's apparently having a change of heart, and I do think it's somewhat real. And I mentioned his appearance, and I mentioned his hobbies, that he's into the grappling, the MMA. Because he brought Dana White on the board. We learned about this yesterday for him, which seems kind of odd, but Dana White is a genius executive. He's not just a sports guy. And I thought that was a really outside the box thing, but it shows you his persona. This is legit here. He's a different person than what he was in his early 20s when he was trying to get rich off of designing an app that was made to rate girls, which is really the origin of Facebook. And he's a different guy than he was in his early 30s when he was just basically a lemming, following the powers that be, following the Silicon Valley overlords who had preceded him, and leading his company down this censorship regime that ended up being very discriminatory and big proponents of fake news, and divided the country. And he was a big part of that. I'll have more on that later as I break down his stuff. But he's announced some major changes, and these major changes include a total overhaul of the way that Facebook does censorship, less censorship, and scrapping third-party fact checkers, which he describes as having destroyed more than they created. And I'll just give you a quick little history, which is hard to do because I could opine on this topic for hours and hours, because this is one of the biggest ones we've ever tracked at Breitbart News. I've written extensively. I've been told maybe the best chapter of Breaking the News, my first book, New York Times bestseller, is on this exact subject. It's the lengths that the Silicon Valley master of the universe have gone to censor online content, particularly our content, conservative content. And it all started with the 2016 election of Donald Trump. So Facebook, obviously a well-known platform, and it was more the Wild West out there. And it was an opportunity for people who had the most fast-paced, the most in-depth, the most accurate, the most exciting coverage to be able to surpass the legacy media and their slow dinosaur-like behavior and beat them at their own game. And that's what we did at Breitbart News. We became the biggest entity on all of Facebook. when it came to news. It was arguably, if you want to be a technicality, it was top 3, New York Times, us, and Huffington Post. Maybe it was CNN, top 4. But anyway, we were probably number 1, and certainly in this group of 3 or 4 different outlets that were dominant on the platform. And that was crazy to people. And there's a big study that came out in 2017 by a guy named Yochai Benkler, who is a professor at Harvard and MIT, and he published it in the Columbia Journalism Review, as mainstream as it gets in terms of reviewing media. Breitbart-led right-wing media ecosystem altered the broader media agenda. And basically, we were determining what people were talking about. And when you read this in the Breitbart newsroom, as I was editor-in-chief at the time, it's very exciting. It's like, not only did we help Trump get elected by reporting the truth, but now we're getting some ink showing what badasses we are. Very exciting. But I knew exactly where this was going to go. This was going to be deemed entirely unacceptable to the left because the left's totalitarian. And they don't really want free speech. Liberals want free speech. There's very few liberals in power in this country. There's conservatives, and there's populist nationalists, and there's leftists. Liberals have a very little pull right now in America. So people confuse liberal and left, but if you listen to my show, you've probably heard enough Dennis Prager to know there's a big difference. But the left hates liberalism. The left hates free speech. So they were going to figure out ways to try to track us down and shut us down. And they threw everything at us. Google was the most blatant. Google basically turned off Breitbart's traffic from the Google search engine. Happened in May of 2020. There's a day, May the 5th. They just shut it down, and any Google traffic to Breitbart, you'd have to use the word Breitbart in your search term, or you were not going to get fed a Breitbart story, even if it was exclusive. Facebook took a couple of approaches. Their first approach was they diminished all of political content. And they said that people are getting angered. They're getting frustrated by political content. Zuckerberg addresses this in his speech that I'm about to play for you. Well, I don't know if that's true, but what I do know is that meant diminishing Breitbart's ability to go viral on their platform. They also started to implement a very onerous fact-checking regime, and there were a couple of vectors with the fact checks. First of all, there were the fact checkers you've heard of, the PolitiFacts, the Snopeses. All these people are trained left-wing journalists. They went to the same J schools as all of the fake news media that you all hate. And they're basically just enforcing the party line. There's no semblance of balance in the fact checking. It was just the leftists enforcing their truth, not the truth, their truth. And that took a lot of different forms. There was covert fact checking where we were told we'd gotten something wrong, but they wouldn't tell us what it is. There were places where they would essentially stop the reach of a story. They would shut it down within the algorithm while they went through their fact-checking process. And maybe after 5 days, they would have determined we hadn't done anything wrong, but the point was already moot. The story had no momentum. And that meant the story wasn't going to get out. And it meant that any sort of benefit from their algorithm that we would have gotten from a viral story, that we wouldn't have gotten that as well. So it's a double whammy. And then they would accumulate these point systems where if you gotten certain violations over time, so it could be a 90-day window, could be a year-long window, you get various penalties, first within the algorithm, and then you're in jeopardy of losing your account entirely. There are some third rails that you could hit. I'm talking the climate change stories. I'm talking coronavirus stories, where if you did anything wrong, stories about illegal immigration. If you used the wrong terminology, if you didn't caveat something a certain way, if you didn't add context of people who were incorrect but disagreed with the story that we put, then you would get another strike against you. And once the strike was there, sometimes they're very hard to remove. All of this was designed to demoralize, to demonetize, and to disincentivize people like me from expanding our business online. So this has been the environment that I've been living through for the last 7 years of my life. And we were told today, we woke up this morning, that is no longer the case. Now, the big question is, do we trust Zuckerberg? Of course we don't. But I've got reason to believe maybe he's serious here. There's several reasons. First of all, the water's warm. Musk has done a lot of these things, and Zuckerberg shouts out Musk in the video. He's done a lot of these exact things that Zuckerberg's going to propose, and they've gone well for him. X seems to be more powerful and influential than it's ever been. Now, I've got huge problems with X, and I could get to those, but that's not the point of today. They certainly have a lot of clout, and they got that clout while opening things up for free speech and having a completely different fact check regime. The second thing is these personal changes I mentioned with Zuckerberg. He's clearly someone who is going through stuff mentally, and maybe he's getting to the point where he doesn't want to take orders from the censorious left. And third of all, I think a lot of people in Silicon Valley, which is the community in which he resides for the most part when he's not on one of his Hawaiian islands that he's bought, I think he's fed up with the left. I think they see that they're here to destroy. They're not here to create. They're not trying to encourage innovation. They're trying to shut down people who are successful for various reasons, and maybe they're fed up with it. So add that to the fact that Donald Trump is coming in, and Zuckerberg's not a deeply political guy. He's just been trying to do what he thinks was best for his business. That started out with engagement. Do whatever you can to get people addicted to your platform. And then the next thing was to comply to the censorious left during the woke moment, where they were trying to shut everything down they disagreed with, which we all lived through and mercifully seems to have come to an end. The cancel culture era. So maybe the new era of America, this anti-woke moment where the pendulum swung back, where MAGA is ascendant, where Trump isn't just winning, but he's winning the popular vote as well as the electoral college. And we could be looking at a Democrat Party in disarray. You guys saw the footage of Nancy Pelosi with a walker. Can't even walk around. It's the Mitch McConnell's not showing up to the Senate. We got a new guard coming in, we hope, and maybe opening up America to our full potential. And he's got an opportunity to be in the cutting edge of that. And he's 40 years old. He could be around for 40, 50 years. So I'm optimistic that this is the beginning of something very beautiful and very good. But let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Zuck 2.0. Here we go.
The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically,
okay, so all of his language here is very specific. He knows is going to be watched by billions of people, hundreds of millions, if not billions, and is going to be entered in the historical record. We're going to have to hold him this stuff. So far, he's already name-checked the election. So he's basically saying, congrats to Donald Trump. This is for you. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And he's also starting to go through admission of guilt, admitting to things that Facebook has gotten wrong. Things that I was attacked for suggesting Facebook had gotten wrong. And we were attacked at Breitbart for saying they'd gotten this wrong. So he's admitting that they were wrong. So let's see what he got wrong.
First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US.
Okay, this is big. So he's going to, community notes is the fact-checking platform that X has, where basically if a story gets viral, gets critical mass of readership, and there's inaccuracies in the story, then I don't know the exact process. I'll have to bone up on it because this is going to be the standard, I guess. There are people who can make a comment on it that corrects the record. So the post is not deleted, is not even shut down the algorithm. There's just context added directly beneath the post telling the truth about it. And for the most part, they are accurate. The community notes I've maybe can only recall once or twice where I've seen a community note where I thought that's actually not true. Normally the notes are accurate. So whatever Musk is up to, that's a much better model than what I've had to deal with the fact checkers at Facebook, which are clearly left-wing partisans. Many of them might be affiliated with groups like NewsGuard, which are essentially deep state operations. NewsGuard, I could go on for an hour about NewsGuard. NewsGuard was a concoction of the deep state and veteran journalists to try to collaborate together, to try to create an environment where the government was running the fact-check operations on social media. Recall that Biden, and I think Hillary tried this too, but Biden has sent specific posts to Zuckerberg and asked for them to be diminished in his algorithm or shut down or blocked or corrected or whatever. The Biden administration has gone directly to Facebook and asked for censorship. So this has been a business model for his company called NewsGuard, and there's others like it. Their main goal in their charter, and you can read all this online, we've reported all this at Breitbart News, is to actually try to get it so that advertisers do not advertise in businesses like mine, like at Breitbart's. So it is, he's saying flat out, we're replacing fact checkers with community notes. The fact checking business is going out of business, and the people are going to be in charge of figuring out what's right or wrong for themselves and getting those community notes posted. I dig it. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be infinitely better and much less corrupt.
After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
Okay, this is a great admission, but I would like for him to say, I'm sorry. It just would feel good. I'm not a big demanding apology guy, but he shouldn't be apologizing here. And what is he doing to the people like us at Breitbart, where we've been more censored than I would bet any other outlet, because we're the biggest on Facebook anyway. Us and Fox News are the two biggest outlets on Facebook for politics. And we were even bigger by a great margin when he allowed for more political stuff on his website. So he is saying that the fact checkers got too censorious. They overdid it. They were trying to be the defenders of democracy, and they weren't. They were defenders of lies, a charade. So I love this. I like the medallion. He looks cool. All these, he's saying great stuff. But let's not forget that this was the guy who was in charge of all of this. So
over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse.
Okay, so this is another one where Breitbart, we get penalized here for being the canaries in the coal mine. This is a historic show. We're going to have to mark this down. Everyone should watch the show. I can already tell. If people understand what level of harassment we got for reporting accurately on immigration, for us to use accurate terms like illegal immigrant or illegal alien. Illegal alien is an accurate term, and we weren't allowed to use it if we wanted to post something on Facebook. We have these brilliant stories explaining why we object to things like H-1Bs, written by guys like Neil Monroe, an immigrant to this country. And we have to think twice about posting it on Facebook and what sort of framing we'd have to give it, because the biased fact checkers, Zuckerberg's admitting they were biased, would come in and tell us you're not allowed to say those things. This has been the reality that we've lived ever since Donald Trump won the first time. That you cannot report accurate things because the biased fact checkers would declare that those are unsayable. You can't say those things. You can't do that. And then they would harass us. They come up with all sorts of ways to harass us. The woke stuff is another one. You can't post stuff without a lot of fear if you're going to post about people who are detransitioning, people who regret their choices to become trans, that fell into the cult and then fell out of it, the trans cult. Reporting this stuff was a risk that not only would it get censored and then we'd have days of having to deal with fact checkers, debating idiots with a clear bias, but then once that happened, that would shut down our other content in his algorithm. It meant that our content wouldn't show up as frequently in other people's feeds. The algorithm that he controlled. Zuckerberg has been the de facto editor-in-chief of one of the biggest newspapers on earth, which is Facebook, by having this algorithm and entrusting it to these left-wing fact checkers. Not to mention, I'm sure a bunch of left-wing people who work for him. And this has been the reality on a huge portion of the internet known as Facebook for a very long time. So this is welcome news, but you can also tell it's somewhat frustrating to some degree. Let's continue.
What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far.
Almost everything he's saying is perfect. I have to say, it just, look, I'm going to be hard on him in some ways, but other ways he's saying all the right stuff. It was never meant to be inclusive, though. This was never meant to be exclusive. This was meant to exclude. It was meant to exclude people with mainstream views like mine. And those that are 8 figures of readers at Breitbart News every day that come in, or I guess it's, every month, but, hundreds of millions of page views a month at Breitbart News. And it has been that way for over a decade. And we're normal readers, normal people, like this content, believe in this content, trust its accuracy. And we were excluded to some degree from this platform, at least certain topics were.
So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower-severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting.
Okay, really good. So basically, he's acknowledging here that the algorithms were trying to catch stuff that was unsayable. that these sort of low-grade violations, meaning, oh, did you say illegal alien when you should have said undocumented migrant? Or did you say something that was raised too many questions about the coronavirus vaccine? That's the type of stuff that would get flagged in the past. Oh, did you call someone by the wrong pronouns? That would get flagged in the past. So now they're going to focus on flagging stuff that's illegal, like human trafficking, drug trafficking. I would assume child sex slave, child pornography. I'm sure all that stuff is going to come up. How about the mental health crisis that so many of our teens are going through because of his Instagram platform, which he owns? Instagram in particular, but really all of social media, has created this environment where huge numbers of young women in particular are not just getting wrapped up in the trans cult because YouTube and TikTok are equally responsible, but Instagram in particular creates these body images of people that are unrealistic. And they're creating a mental health epidemic in this country. And Zuckerberg is as much to blame for this as any individual on the planet. I don't think he wanted this. I don't think he wanted it. I don't think he's happy about it. But he has, over the last decade, allowed for it to happen. Because his people that he put in charge were so busy policing Breitbart and trying to make sure that we weren't putting out accurate stories about the horrific Biden regime and the trans cult and climate change and the coronavirus and all the stuff that they didn't want out there, when they probably should have been focusing on why is there an epidemic of teen girls having mental health issues, committing suicide, et cetera, eating disorders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is not just making a toxic environment on social media, it's making a toxic environment for the whole country. It's a cloud hanging over the country that this mental health crisis is taking place, and a lot of it comes directly from this platform. And he's admitting that the algorithms and the people who are writing them were much more concerned with the censorship than with these actual criminality. Okay, here we go.
The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms.
I would like to hear about what are the mistakes. I'd like to hear what are the mistakes you got in mind, Mark. What do you like? Can you give us a few examples? And here, try to be brief, but any good ones there we should know about?
We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down.
I don't think that's true. I don't think they'll count less bad stuff. I think it'll be very quick for these guys. You guys are so smart, geniuses, Silicon Valley, AI is coming. I 100% believe they can catch more of the child porn, the sex trafficking, and the eating disorder creating content than they know. I think they'll be able to do that fine, and they can just leave the accurate news reports from Breitbart online.
Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed. So we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now. And
again, he's got to be, this is mostly so good. I'm very pleased with this. This is mostly a very good statement, but there's some little weasel words in there that you can pick apart. That's why these podcasts are fun. You wouldn't have time to do this if you're on cable news. But when he says people were upset, who were these people? Were these the left-wing millennials who were writing code at Facebook? The people who had put off having their families, who had taken mountains of student debt so they'd go work at Facebook to get some stock options? The snowflake generation? Those were the people who were upset. The rest of us, we were upset about the country. We were upset about inflation. We were upset about illegal immigration. We were upset about the trans cult. We wanted to talk about that stuff on Facebook. I know that because of how dominant Breitbart was and continues to be. But it was even at another level when he allowed for quote unquote civic content. The people who were upset weren't us. It was the people at your own company who didn't like the fact conservatives were doing so well on his platform.
And we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive.
The people who want to see it again are the people who thought the way to future-proof Facebook was to censor. When we had our censorship moment where everyone was reappraising the First Amendment, they were reappraising speech online. And they thought maybe the right thing to do is to just have a censorship culture now. And now we're just a country that censors. So those people, if they're not an ideological left-winger, are seeing the tea leaves now. They're seeing how much attention Musk is getting. They're seeing how Trump is ascendant. They're seeing how the cool kids are now conservatives and MAGA. And they're thinking, well, wait a minute. If we're concerned about our bottom line, if we're concerned about our 401ks and our stock options, then might be a better move to ease up on some of the fascism, right? So that's why those people want that content again. It's not about the content itself. It's about it is now a better business model for Mark Zuckerberg and Meta to be open to this type of stuff. They thought it was a good business model to censor on behalf of the Bidens and the deep state in the past. Now they think the right business model is to kick those people to the curb. We hope. We pray.
Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with...
Okay, so moving the content moderation to Texas. Really interesting here. It's interesting how Zuckerberg is embracing that he's following Trump and Musk, and I give him a lot of credit for this because he's a guy who became a multi-billionaire in his 20s. He was probably a 100-billionaire before he was 30. And you got to probably have a pretty big ego to have had that happen to you. And he's out there and he's looking around and he's thinking, Musk was right to leave California and go to Texas. Trump is right about some of this stuff that I've missed. Him winning means that we're in a new paradigm when it comes to not just politics, but speech. And he's following them and he's admitting it, that I'm following X on the community notes. I'm following Musk to Texas. So big shout out to Musk. We'll have days to complain about Musk. Today is a positive day for Mr. Musk. And it's kind of cool. I do regard it as a stunt, the moving to Texas, because if he goes to Austin, it's going to be very similar people to Silicon Valley, I'm sure. Maybe a little more down to earth, but I don't know. I think it's very similar. But California's not cool now. It's a big middle finger in the air to Newsom. I like that. You got to go to a place where there's more normal people. The people who consume Facebook are normal people. It's not the elite who drive that platform. It's normal people. And normal people live in Texas. Normal people don't live in Menlo Park. They don't. It's the richest zip code in the world where Mark Zuckerberg's company is. So he's right to want to get out.
And work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The U.S. has the strongest constitutional protection.
He sees Trump as an ally with Europe. Europe wants to censor American companies because free speech is not a European value. Freedom is not a European value. And to the same way it is in the United States. And they have much more socialist streak. They want to confiscate more wealth. They are hostile to American businesses. And he's saying, Trump, please work with me so we can make sure that Europe, and I think he's going to get to China, right? He's got to get to China next. Make sure they're not censoring us too much, that we're trying to open up the world so that my businesses can do business
Constitutional
elsewhere.
Protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there.
Amen.
Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down.
This is a call out to the left-wingers in Brazil in particular. Left-wing courts in Brazil have caused tons and tons of problems. We have tons of reporting on that at Breitbart News over time, and Zuckerberg's accurately concerned about it.
China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the U.S. government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the U.S. government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression.
All right, it's good stuff. There's a little bit more of the speech, but I think we got the picture. We broke a story in 2018 at Breitbart how President Trump's personal Facebook engagement had dropped 45% after changing to the algorithm to be more censorious, to shut down the Civic content. So it's nice to see that the pendulum's swinging back, but I want more. I want more. I think that there should be more done. I'm happy to see the change take place. I knew Breitbart was in a amazing position to have a great year in 2025. That's clearly more so the case. But there's been a lot of harm that's been done. A lot of people's lives have been altered by these horrible algorithms and the totalitarianism and the censorship that has been the pervasive, dominating force on social media over the last 7 years. And so I think that there needs to be reparations done. There needs to be a penance. There needs to be a way to do more than just we're just going to turn on a dime. But there's been a lot of people who have lost business. There's been a lot of people who have had their reputations destroyed. There have been a lot of people who lost relationships with family members because of this climate that was created largely by the censors at Facebook. So not all will be forgiven. Not all will be forgotten. But this is the beginning of something good. This is the beginning of something good. It's a positive day, getting rid of a lot of these restrictions. But on editorial calls, I would periodically refer to Zuckerberg, not just as one of the masters of the universe. I would refer to him as one of the editors of the internet. Because if he didn't like something to be on the internet, he would edit it. And that did a lot of harm to a lot of people. So very happy to see the Zuck 2.0. Would be much more interesting to have a conversation with him now than I think it would have been in the past. But there needs to be reparations of some sort. So I'll try to formulate what that looks like. Folks, pay attention, because this is as serious as it gets. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are racing to lock in radical policies before Trump takes office on January the 20th. They're not just winding down, they're cementing their control. Biden's already signed Executive Order 14067, and banks are actively testing a government-controlled digital dollar right now. This isn't about modernizing currency, it's about total control. They want to track every dollar you earn, save, and spend. Every single one. And here's the kicker. Once the system's fully implemented, it'll be nearly impossible for Trump to undo it. The radical left and their global elite allies will have permanent grips on your financial life long after they're out of power. Trump's called this a dangerous threat to freedom, and J.D. Vance warns it can mean total government control over your finances. Folks, this is real and it's happening now, but you're not powerless. My friends at Priority Gold have created a wealth preservation guide to help you fight back. It lays out 3 critical steps to shield your savings from this overreach. All you have to do is text FREEDOM to 24999 right now and get your guide. That's FREEDOM to 24999 or visit PriorityGold.com. Don't wait. Text FREEDOM to 24999 today and shield what's yours. Send me an email, aloha@alexmarlowe.com. Humiliating defeat for legacy media. John Nolte's got an essay for us on that at Breitbart News. And a great, great day overall that hopefully will get better. And it will only get better, though, if we are diligent and vigilant about making sure that the new algorithm changes are the most fantastic, the biggest, and the bestest. So we're looking forward to that. Great news overall. And congratulations to all of you. Victory begets victory. And this is exactly what's happened. All right, tons of other stuff in the news. Super busy news day. Let me mow through a few other things. We are in a horrifying environment right now, and this is breaking news. We're having this conversation. In terms of natural disasters, just a remarkably bad day for natural disasters. And I'm thinking personally here in the Pacific Palisades neighborhood in Los Angeles is on fire. This is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in America. We have Breitbart editors there. This is getting very close to Breitbart's headquarters in Brentwood, California. California is not prepared for this. We never are. So mass evacuations, hundreds of acres on fire, and we are in a climate where there's historic winds right now. Dangerous conditions where we're supposed to see hurricane-level winds in California, which is a desert, and we've not had a lot of rain over the last year. We had a very rainy last couple of years, but the last year has not been rainy. And so we're seeing an environment where we have hundreds of acres already burning in the record-setting winds across the Southland. I don't know how this is going to go. But this could be a Hawaii fire type situation, conceivably. So we are watching this intently for both personal and news reasons at Breitbart News, and you should go there for the latest. It's one of a series of natural disasters that we're tracking today. Tibet earthquake killed at least 126 people, leaving many trapped. Sometimes when this is in Nepal, sometimes when these remote areas get hit, and you get those first death toll numbers, they end up being a fraction of what the final numbers are. So we're tracking that as well. We've got dangerous cold across the eastern half of the United States. Freezing stuff, bitter cold. And so we'll see how that plays. Viruses everywhere. First U.S. bird flu virus death, Louisiana. So a lot of power out, bird flus. You got neurovirus. You got mystery viruses in China right now. A lot of life-threatening and destructive stuff happening, acts of God. Continues to be the thing that, other than politics, I feel like affects us the most, if not the most. It's harder to talk about on radio sometimes I've fought with this for the last 7-8 years, how long I've been broadcasting, that it's hard to do acts of God content on air. It's much better for TV because you show the B-roll footage and you don't even care about what people are saying. You're just looking at the footage of the destruction. But really big. And I've always been very interested in it at Breitbart because I've kind of always felt that this is one of the big things that's out there. Lot of news, man. Why don't we play some of this? Why don't we play some of this? We've got some. Trump gave a press conference today. He sent Don Jr. to Greenland. He sent Charlie Kirk to Greenland. He said Sergio Gore to Greenland. Sergio is a longtime friend of mine. He's going to be in charge of personnel, PPO office for Trump, which means he's in charge of hiring. So it was very curious for me to see Sergio in Greenland because I don't know what he has to do with Greenland. I know he's friends with Don Jr. But Don, I'm told, is one of the guys who is the guy to vet the cabinet. And him, JD, Susie Wiles, that's kind of the main three you want to get if you want to get a cabinet post. And so aren't these guys supposed to be hiring people? I love these guys, but they're in Greenland doing a real estate deal for Trump. And that seems cold. We're going to make America cold again, guys. Greenland seems freezing right now. Absolutely freezing. Maybe it was a myth. I was always told, no, it's not a myth. No, Greenland is ice and Iceland is green, right? Seems pretty cold there. We still get it. I still want to get it. All right, Trump gave a press conference. Let's play some Trump. Let's do it.
More than anybody in the world. And we're going to have more of it, too. But they took away 625 million acres of offshore drilling. Nobody else does that. And they think they have it, but we'll put it back. I'm going to put it back on day one. I'm going to have it revoked on day one. We'll go immediately if we need to. I don't think we should have to go to the courts, but if we do have to go to the courts, they try to be sneaky. They go in and they sign. Remember, this is a man that said he wants the transition to be smooth. Well, you don't do the kind of things. You don't have a judge working real hard to try and embarrass you.
Okay, so this is big, and he's also mentioning something indirectly that I want to talk about. So he's trying to reverse some of Biden's offshore drilling bans. I mentioned this early in the show. I think it was yesterday's show, if not the show before. That what Biden's trying to do is he's trying to get these bans in place that are hard to reverse. He's found this loophole where if you're protecting these natural resources, it's hard for the next president to come in and reverse it. So we'll unpack this as Trump gets in there and things get settled. But Biden's found this way to give this sop to his left-wing base and to try to ban some level of offshore drilling in a manner that would make it nearly impossible for Trump to undo it. I've got faith Trump will figure it out. But this is not a peaceful transition of power. This is a sabotage. And I can give you a laundry list of examples of sabotage, but this is a clear one and good for Trump for calling it out in that way because this is not peaceful. If you are spending your last couple of weeks in office, not just trying to get stuff done that you want to do, but make things impossible for the next administration that's voted you out and your people out, then that's not peaceful. At least it's not perfectly peaceful. The embarrassment is that there's a big debate going on whether or not Jack Smith can release a report on all of the ills that Trump did during the Jack Smith cases. We're going to have a ton of this content in really the second quarter of the year. I've got it earmarked that we're going to do some deep dives into all of these Trump cases and just how egregious and offensive they were. And I feel like people are just beginning to understand how bad these things were. But there is this ticking clock. That on the 20th, Donald Trump's going to assume the oath. He's going to take the oath of office. He's going to be president. And none of these courts can add any burden, theoretically, to him. So criminal court, civil court, whatever it is, the Constitution and established statute is pretty clear that if the president's the president, then you got to let him be focused. So it's a legal gray area during the lame duck, during the interim between the election and the inauguration. And so that's why we also learned that Judge Merchan is still going to sentence Trump. He's going to sentence him probably Friday of this week if you're listening to the show the day it came out. And the reason why is because Merchan wants to be done. He wants to have entered final judgment by the 20th. So he's not looking to drag this out. Trump wants to drag it out, of course, so that it's a loose end and is not resolved. So then he'll be president and he'll probably just go away. But Merchan doesn't want that. He wants to close the loop, and then it won't be his problem. It'll be Trump's problem. And Jack Smith is no doubt thinking the same thing. He's got this stuff. He knows his cases are done, that they're going nowhere at this point. But he would like to get the information that he spent years investigating and get it out there. Left-wing guy with left-wing family. And he'd like to do damage to Trump. And Biden, of course, could shut this down at any moment. And Biden won't, because he wants to do damage to Trump. So, all right, let's play some more from here.
Because I did nothing wrong. By the way, I did nothing, absolutely nothing wrong. If I did something wrong, I wouldn't be standing here right now, because I've won all these cases. Nobody's ever won so many cases as I have.
You've won a lot of cases.
I mean, Jack Smith had cases all over the place. People were being subpoenaed. Lives were being ruined. They were spending everything they had, money. We were helping them out. We had to.
So good. Let's continue.
Better get done by the inaugural.
But when you say all hell will
Before I
be
take
paid,
office.
all hell must be paid.
Talking about hostage negotiations.
Well, do I have to define it for you? Look, all
No, I think
hell
you're not
will
gonna
break out.
telegraph
If
what-
those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East.
So good.
It will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
Can you imagine being a Hamas terrorist right now, hearing Trump say that, knowing he'll never run again? He'll never have to face the public again. He can do whatever he wants within his legal rights. He's got the power of the American military behind him. He's got a mandate politically. And he is saying, you let those guys out or you got hell to pay. Oh, what a pleasure. What a change of pace we're going to get with Biden transitioning to Trump versus Biden transitioning to Harris. All right, last one on Trump for the day.
And we're going to be announcing a future date pretty soon. We're going to change, because we do most of the work there and it's ours. We're going to be changing, sort of the opposite of Biden, where he's closing everything up, essentially getting rid of $50 to $60 trillion worth of assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate.
Who comes up with this stuff?
It's appropriate.
Who comes up with this stuff? It is, I was thinking about this geographically. And what has more, I mean, it's pretty equal amount of border that we have of the Gulf of Mexico to Mexico. I think we might have a little more. So we'll try to look this up for tomorrow's show. Why did we call it the Gulf of Mexico? It should be the Gulf of America. I love it. Who is coming up with this stuff for him? He's so good. He has these ideas. They're so simple. And then you think, well, why did I come up with that? How come no one came up with that? Think critically about this country for decades. And then Trump just drops, yeah, we're going to call it the Gulf of America. Done. It's over. We're doing it. We're going to miss him so much, guys. We got a beautiful 4 years ahead, God willing. He is the historical figure of our time. And we need him at this moment. Huge opportunity, inspiring greatness, inspiring change, and the cheerleading for this country, which we so desperately need right now. Someone who believes in this country and our founding vision, our founding myth. All right, that'll be today's show. Some of you continue to send me nice emails, and I did not adequately think about any of them. Today I read several nice ones. Leaving a comment, subscribing. I noticed that our Rumble numbers are huge in the view count, but we could do a little better in the subscriber count. So if you're watching there, please subscribe wherever you are getting the show. Don't make it a one-off. Make it part of your daily routine. I promise you a tight, entertaining news broadcast every single day, or an interview with that you won't get anywhere else. I promise that. Those are the two formats we're doing. It seems to be working well, and I can't thank you enough for liking, commenting, sharing, but most importantly, telling 10,000 friends and family members about The Alex Marlowe Show. Thanks to our producer, Misty, all my pals at Salem and at Breitbart News, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.